told us, the Senate, to go beyond reading the Auditor General's report on financial audits and to start looking at socioeconomic impact assessments. So I would like to put it on the table, Clerk, that's one area where we will require some institutional capacity development so that we are able to do, to assess, to do impact audits. Now, I'll give everyone 1 minute, except for Carol. Carol will have 3, no more. Everybody 1 minute, just give us your final thoughts, answer any question you think was posed to you, and tell us your final bits. Carol will be the last one. I think once we're done with Maureen, let's go to Carol Gaita, and then we can finish with Carol from KEPSA. Thank you.
You'll give me 3 minutes as well. Take a number of public
2 minutes for you.
Thank you.
An emphasis on this question of impact assessment. Maybe in response to the speaker's comments and suggestions around capacity or the development of institutional capacities, absolutely. As I mentioned in terms of UNDP's offer across the region, this is definitely an area that we'll be seeking to explore and bundle. And maybe the last message on my part relate to the questions of coherence and complementarity of actions. And I know that within the devolution working group that brings together pretty much all international partners, this is one of the single most important items that is being worked on. Devolution is a journey, whether 800 meters or marathon. I think we agree that it's an iterative process, and I think we'll be guided by the Senate in terms of how to improve our own internal coordination and, of course, our engagement with county government. Thank you.
Great, thanks. I'll try to be brief. I counted, up to 11 questions, not all sort of for USAID, but I think there's a couple themes can address really quickly because they're really important. First, on institutional strengthening and also perceptions. In development theory, it's like so many things, lots of opinions, lots of confusion about what really delivers impact and what's important. But when you really look at it, and you look across countries, about those countries which have the highest levels of satisfaction, the highest level of happiness, and move forward most expeditiously into development, there's one thing that stands out, and really one thing across the research that is consistent. And that's if you ask the people, what's your level of confidence in your institutions? And I think that just underscores some of the comments today and how important it is to build that capacity and also to build that trust in the institutions, because it is absolutely fundamental for democracy, and it's also a space that's under attack right now, sometimes for understandable reasons, and sometimes because it's an area that people can attack intentionally to tear down democracy and institutions. So it's an area we want to focus on. We have support projects focused on IBC and other institutions, capacity development assistance, that we want to work together with our other partners, because it's an area that works best when we partner with others to develop going forward. So thank you for highlighting that. Another thing that was a kind of ask is assistance, particularly the struggles that are going on right now with the drought. That's something that we're keenly aware of. I know everybody is aware of it, but it's also something that there's two things I want to highlight there. One, I mentioned how important it is on communication so people understand what we're doing, and sometimes as the US government, we don't do all the best job as we can. Right now, for drought assistance within the Horn of Africa, 80% of all funding in all the world is coming from the US government. We work and partner with our UN colleagues, the World Food Program. We provide funding to civil society organizations, and sometimes that might not be apparent, that the assistance you're getting in your counties, 80% of that most likely is coming from the US government. We recently passed a supplemental coming out of Ukraine to add additional funding into the region, including Kenya, recognizing the huge impact that crisis has had on the supply chain, on fertilizer prices, on input prices, and that includes funding here in Kenya. So we'll continue to be a leading partner on the drought. We feel that in particular, Kenya has the institutions in place to make that a good investment. But I also want to highlight that we're bringing together our development side of our assistance, because we realize that humanitarian assistance has to go hand in hand with building resilience. because we're dealing with the drought today, but we're dealing with the climate change that's going to continue to have huge impacts on the livelihoods of people in Kenya, around the world, for their foreseeable future in the years to come, and we have to address that together. So maybe I'll pause there, and happy to maybe have other additional conversations with you all during the break. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. So two points from me. The first one is a reflection that democracy is always a work in progress. And I think when we look back at this election, as Kenya has always looked back on the previous elections, it's always learnt and it's always taken things forward. And I think there'll be two sets of things that will get taken forward. I'm sure people will look at IEBC. We've been supporting it for 2 years, and there'll almost certainly be lessons to learn there. But actually my sense of it, when you look at the complexity and scale of the election, the vast majority of the work that IEBC did was actually really good work. I mean, it was, and it should be recognized while we think about those elections, ways forward. I think the second interesting point around this one, this is something we're thinking about, and I put it as a proposition. You may have much better ideas, but there may be a case for an election finances bill. When you look from the outside at Kenya's elections, that feels like something that should be looked at. So I just put that one as something to think about. The second main set of issues I wanted to talk about was actually similar to David. And I think, you know, when we look at the US, I mean, they have done an amazing job on the Horn of Africa in particular, and supporting really, I think it's the fourth rains have failed, probably the fifth are about to fail. It's the worst drought in 40 years. This is an issue for many Kenyans and for many people in this region. I would totally really praise, frankly, what the U.S. government has done. I think David's last point is one I think that's really worth a lot more consideration, which is, what does the forward look and feel like? Because climate change is here, it's real. Many Kenyans are facing it all the time. But I don't think yet, whether it's in Kenya or other places, we're quite there with what's like a 21st century Ghana. Actually, a lot of that is being piloted, but it's not yet mainstreamed. So I think some of the answers are already here. We just need to build on them. To the colleague from Tana River, I think this is a nuts and bolts issue. We often come to Tana River, we work with Tana River, but you talk to the county commissioner, you talk to the governor, but maybe the senator's not there, maybe the MCAs are not there. So I feel feel we need to try harder to engage the whole collective in Tana River, not necessarily the people we might just naturally talk to. But I think it's a very, very valid point, so thank you very much.
I'll speak to two comments. One from the speaker on opportunities to strengthen political party caucuses. And yes, I believe that there is indeed an opportunity. So moving forward, I think this is one thing that we'll need to integrate in our continued discussions with the British High Commission on how to engage political party caucuses, because we appreciate that within the different political party manifestos, there are very good ideologies which can actually lead to improved service delivery, and therefore there's a role in that. I know in the past, the foundation, Westminster Foundation for Democracy, has worked with parliamentary caucuses, that's APNAC and KEDIPA, KEWOPA, but not the political party caucuses. So there's an opportunity there, and we will look forward to having a conversation on that. And then there's also a comment on areas for capacity strengthening, public finance management, coordination of intergovernmental relations for effective public service delivery, and inclusivity in public participation. Those are areas that we have identified, and at times we are constrained by resources, but they are within our radar. And as we continue engaging different partners to come on board, not necessarily ourselves, but others working within the space, we shall ensure that, you know, these still remain as key areas, because they indeed are crucial to the success of devolution. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll speak to a couple of questions from on public participation from Honorable Jute Marsabit and Honorable Kavindu from Machakos. Yes, indeed, public participation has challenges. So on the issue of training programs, especially for Marsabit, I recognize that indeed civil society organizations might not always be everywhere, and that's partly why we are trying to bring together civil society organizations under one roof, and therefore be able to map out where we are working and identify areas that have not been addressed, and therefore just make sure that we are leaving no one behind in terms of the counties. Secondly, I think there is need for public participation. Capacity building on what exactly public participation is. Part of it is monitoring the public participation processes. We've had challenges, especially on inclusion, where documents are very bulky, there's no sign language interpreters, the venues chosen for public participation are not accessible, amongst others. And part of it, perhaps as KEPSA is doing its competitive index, as civil society organizations, we also need to do a county compliance index on issues of public participation and inclusion. On the representation, I think other than having political parties enforce their lists, and with IBC, litigation still remains a challenge. An opportunity, but cognizant of the comment from Honorable Mugatana about litigation sometimes not serving its, being a double-edged sword, so as we may. And perhaps to respond to that question is to say that's why we are advocating for dialogue between the different entities. Because for us as civil society organizations, our approach is normally from the constitutional perspective, and whether there's compliance, but perhaps forums such as this could help us have a common understanding and a common approach to some of the issues, and therefore address some of the challenges, such as which you have mentioned. Finally, on the political parties and caucuses, indeed, as an institution, we've actually done some work around this area. And allow me to say that we'll be calling on your office, Honorable Speaker, because with some partners, there's a program that we are rolling out. We are calling it SIDPAC, and that a specific focus will be on how political party caucuses in Parliament help in the development of the agenda. Veronica, we will be tracking your manifesto and seeing how you keep the promises to Kenya, and we are developing a tracker on that. But also to just see that whether it's the government, the political party in government, political party in opposition, we want to see that this informs the legislative agenda of the House, and so we'll be calling upon the offices on the rollout of this program. And then finally, just conclude by saying that as senators, as the protectors of devolution, we really must make public participation meaningful, useful, and the democratic tool that citizens can use. As civil society organizations, we remain your key partners, and we look forward to working together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I guess I'll try and take my 3 minutes. I'll keep it short. But I think two things that come out. We are ready for the Speakers Roundtable. So I'll be working very closely with the Senate to make sure that we have it as soon as possible so that we can address these things in detail. Secondly, because of what I mentioned, the private sector development devolution support program, I'll be inviting all of you once we present to yourselves in the areas that we can partner so that we make it work with the counties, because that's really where the work is. But let me address very briefly some of the things that came up, and then we'll go into the details when we meet together and have a full day with yourselves. On the manufacturing, you're right. The cost of production is our issue. So we've worked very hard with the last 10 years on the ease of doing business. So you can see our indicators, we've moved from 136 to 56. So we have streamlined processes like registering your company, paying your taxes, and all that. But the cost remains the challenge. And it's what is the cost to doing business. And that's why you're seeing even the things that we produced before, tomatoes, onions, now we are getting them from Uganda, Tanzania, because we can't produce here. And you were very clear, and you talked about the multiple levies and licenses. And we've raised this so many times. I'm really hoping that this is the Senate that will help us address that. We now have, and we worked again with Senate on the county own resource revenue bill. If we could implement that to the letter, then we'll address a lot of this. So just mentioning that so that we can go into the details. In terms of membership, yes, you're right. We really try to reach businesses. But unless you come to us, sometimes we'll not understand what the real issue is. And we can't just come out and say, this is happening. So that's why we keep saying, come to us, and the more you're a part of us and our members, we understand you, we learn you, we know how to help you when the challenges are. And so I'll not go to the particular business, and that was a response to, because a question had come to us, and we have to respond, and we have to be honest with Kenyans and say this is happening. But after that, we did reach out and we said what is needed, and we've done that before, even in 2015, and before that when the issue first came up. And so we are willing to work with every business. And the reason why I was saying let's provide the working spaces even for the small businesses, because we can find them. When they're on the streets, we don't know who they are. They're here today on this street, tomorrow they're in another street. It's very hard. But when they're in the markets, they're proper working spaces, we can find them. We run a lot of capacity building programs, credit facilities, working with the different partners, some of them who are here, access to markets, value chains with the big businesses. But we need them where we can find them. And that's how we'll help the small businesses. And what we're saying for us, when we think about small businesses, it's just not creating many small businesses, it's scaling up those small businesses. That's our focus. That mama mboga cannot be mama mboga selling in that stall for 10 years. We want to say, how is she growing to even now? And what we've been doing, we've been running a program with Trademark East Africa, supported by the UK government, on what we call the e-commerce booster program, getting them to sell online. They don't have to travel to any other part of the country, but they can sell their goods. And that is a program. We have a relationship now with our counterpart, Corporate Council of Africa in the US, which we signed last year. Again, it's focused on SMEs. How do our SMEs sell their products to the US? How do they access? They're not the big companies who can be able to go to the US and get those markets, but we're trying to help them. So I'll run you down all the SME programs that we're doing when we meet, and we see how we partner with yourselves. And it's true, we defend our space. We're the largest so far business organization in sub-Saharan Africa, something we take pride, and we are really trying to organize other countries to make sure they can have the similar organizations and work with very many counterparts around the world that have the same, because we know if we are not organized, we are private sector-led economy, and so it's important that we develop business. Last two, and I can see the moderator has stood up. I've not finished my 3 minutes. And the last two, on health, yes, as I said, we are facing a crisis. It's the worst drought in 40 years. We have companies, you remember we ran Kenyans for Kenya in 2011, really to mobilize resources for our sisters and our brothers, because we say our businesses cannot thrive. I always say business operates on 3 areas. The economy, which is the profits, because you need to be sustainable. The social, because we need people healthy and people be able to, we cannot have labor if people cannot feed, people are not healthy, and the environment. So it's a triple bottom line, economic, social, and environment. And so this is a key area for us. We already have companies who've been doing a little bit right now. We are happy to do more. So if you're senators who come from the areas where there's drought, please do come to us and see how we can work together. We do have companies that are willing to support, and we're working with other development partners. On waste management, karibu sana. On waste management, I mentioned that we do have the bill in place now on waste management. We'll be looking forward to implementing that with yourselves. Again, we'll go into the details of that. So in the interest of time, all I'm saying, let's engage, let's get into the details of this. And we do have completely, as the senator said, do we have a plan? We do have a plan, and we want to engage you with that so that we grow businesses. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carol, and sorry for hurrying you. I think we look forward for that engagement when it happens.